Ramin.
And I'm Dan.
And this is Two Blokes and a Mic. And we're here today with a very special guest, Leo Manzione. He is a business coach, and I'm going to let Dan take this away.
Well, I've known Leo for just over a year now. I met him through Provisors Group, which is a business networking group, and I will talk more about that later on. But I really wanted to introduce Leo to our audience because he's been an inspiration for me, and everything that he does that I have interacted with him so far has been not only inspirational, but has been helpful in not just my work, but also other people's work. He gives back constantly. Really fantastic guy. And so we wanted to do a bit of a deeper dive in who is Leo and how he can possibly help our audience.
Wonderful. So Leo, welcome aboard the Two Blokes and a Mic train. Destination unknown, so we'll take it from here. So tell us about you, man. Where are you from? How'd you get started? How did you end up where you are right now?
I appreciate that. And I mean, first and foremost, I'm beyond honored by that intro, Dan. Thank you. I mean, that's what I live for. I mean, in a long story short, I mean, I grew up in a small business. I saw what it was like when my father had what he needed versus when he didn't. And that inspired me from a very early age to make sure that I could do everything in my power so that not only he, but the millions of other business owners like him were in a better situation. And unfortunately, there's something that I call the chasm. It's this no man's land between essentially 0 and 10 million, where people are essentially expected to just figure it out. And Provisors is a fantastic network for those bigger businesses. And that's one of the things that very much attracted me to it. But a lot of business owners are just told, unless you can afford me, unless you can really make it work, figure it out on your own. So that's where I work alongside them day in, day out, using certain methodologies that I'm sure we'll talk about to get them what they need.
So what does a business coach actually do?
So a business coach in a nutshell takes a system that is the business and makes it something that can be digested by the business owner. Because there's this phenomenon that you two, especially in your industries, are all too familiar with, where if a system is somebody tries to comprehend it all in one go, it's overwhelming, it's too much. Our brains cannot process it. And a business very much fits that same bill. So the way I describe it is we put it in bite-sized chunks of not only processing the system, but also iterating, improving, acting upon it. So I break businesses down in 5 parts. There's value creation, have something your target market wants and is willing to pay for. Marketing, get their attention. Sales, turn a potential customer into a paying one. Value delivery, deliver upon what was promised. And then finance, manage the resources of the business to make it a reinforcing loop. So by looking at those in turn, and even the components of it, really allows somebody to get focused on growing their business, because otherwise they'll bounce around from task to task to task and just be very frustrated. Because it's like 1,000 drops in 1,000 different buckets, and it's not enough. So by getting very clear with them on, okay, let's use this process to define, this is our ideal target market. This is how you talk to them. This is how you move the conversation forward. This is how you truly make sure it's a good fit. It just gives somebody momentum and allows them to hit goals that often go undefined. Because in the grand scheme of things, businesses so often end up having people's lives fuel the business instead of the other way around. So in a nutshell, we help people understand what they want life-wise and then make sure that the business can fulfill that using proven processes and a step-by-step method that just works with the human brain.
Now, you have spoken about bottlenecks, and when you fix one problem, you figure out there's another problem. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Of course. A bottleneck, and I think you two, your industries are actually a really, really good example of this. For example, you can have the best possible, I'm going to talk about your situation there, Dan. So you've got a great mic, you've got a great computer, you've got great headphones, but if the internet isn't working, then so be it. You can't upload. I mean, everything else could be perfect, top notch, but that shuts the whole system down. And unfortunately, today's day and age where everybody's online, I think we're seeing a lot of those issues. Just, the internet's down. So in business, it's the same thing. We're just figuring out what is the throughput that we're focused on? What's the outcome? Be it money, some impact, and what is holding that back? Because when you figure out what the bottleneck is, by fixing it, it immediately affects that outcome. And the way that you know you're focused on the wrong bottleneck or the wrong component of the business is when you do something to the business or the system and throughput doesn't increase. And that actually just results in a larger investment of time or money in the system that actually doesn't really help anybody because throughput didn't increase.
Right, right.
That I see that a lot. I mean, I'm sorry to step in here, but I see that with business owners a lot. They try things, and again, it's because they really don't have anybody to ask. And being a business owner is a very lonely thing if you've got no board of directors or anything like that. And so they try this and it doesn't work. They try that and it doesn't work. And there's this expenditure of company resources, time, money, energy. And in the end, as you say, no noticeable increase in throughput, right? And answering the question or being able to point a business owner in the direction of something that will actually do that for them and take something off their plate is huge.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that loneliness, and that's something that I think will speak to a lot of business owners that aren't really spending times with others. Like I know you two have this really positive, awesome relationship where you can talk about what you're doing. Yeah. And I think all too often somebody can't really tell the whole story to their life partner, their friends, their family, their employees, their everybody, because if they were to share the whole picture, I mean, we all have seen it. I mean, especially with businesses growing, if you share the whole picture with your employees, sometimes they will run for the hills. They'll be terrified because we have to insulate them from that until things get better. So to have that, be it a coach, be it a partnership, be it a business friend, like what we're talking about here, it's critical. Otherwise, not only is it really demoralizing and difficult business situation to be in, but it's one that just isn't anywhere close to as fun, and the opportunity cost is huge.
Thinking about that, what are some of the questions that you can ask yourself to then figure that out? What is holding you back? What are those kind of questions that we can put it down on paper and then start to work on it?
Absolutely. So I mean, using those 5 parts, and I'll share a book and a resource. That's something that I recommend to people as they work on this stuff on their own. I mean, the realm of value creation, it's all about, am I creating really solid value for somebody? And this is often a really big gut check. There's something called the Crusader rule and the mercenary rule, where the Crusader rule, if you do something you're so passionate about that you can't see it objectively, that actually can be a real drawback because then you're not really focused on value, you're focused on something else that you can't directly control. Right. To the other end of the spectrum, the mercenary rule, doing something just for money, there's always going to come a point at which it's just not worth it. So when somebody can really check and see, am I truly creating the best kind of value for these people that I really want to help, but I'm also focused on building a business, then great. That's value creation. You're set and you move forward. Marketing, it's, do I have a steady, consistent, reliable pipeline of these people that I can consistently build a business around? Because if it's just here and there, if it's feast or famine, it's really tough to build a team, build an infrastructure, build something that has fixed costs, because some months you're going to be very much in the red, and that's tough to sustain. And sales, I really boil it down to, do you have a consistent, and you keep hearing that word again and again, but do you have a process that's the same for everybody going through it, where they have the same experience? It's not sometimes great, sometimes bad, but you set expectations clearly. And then value delivery, when you set expectations, can you meet them, again, consistently, ideally profitably for sure, and then in the very most ideal world, scalably, which means that you could just have as many customers. You could have 10, you could have 10,000. That's really the holy grail for a lot of businesses. Last, finance. And this is probably the easiest question for people to answer. Am I making enough? Because so many business owners, they just can't make ends meet. And that's difficult. That's unsustainable. And as long as it's towards a greater end, that's great. But that's the very least that you should be making ends meet. At most, you should be making a solid profit so you can do other things. And beyond that, I think it might have been Henry Ford that said it, which is a little ironic because it doesn't have the greatest track record. But a business that makes money is not doing enough. It needs to make an impact as well. So those are some questions that I recommend considering as a business owner figures out, where should I focus?
I think the thing that you help people with is, I heard somebody say once, and I think it may have been Tony Robbins, but don't quote me on this. But he says that the most important thing with regard to the success or failure of a business is the owner's psychology. What's between your ears makes or breaks a business.
Yes.
And that's crucial. I mean, and this is why being lonely is very difficult, because who the heck do you ask?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, fine. You tell me X, Y, or Z needs to be done, but how do I know? I don't even know what that means. Who's going to explain it to me? At what point does it become something that I could say, I understand. I'm going to take that and use that.
Yeah.
Right?
We talked about bottlenecks earlier, and another
Yeah.
way of answering Dan's question at the very beginning is essentially saying my job as a business coach is to make it that the only bottleneck in a business is the business owner, because that's really where it belongs, right?
Yes,
where they say, I want to be this big.
Mm.
I want to do this. I don't want it to take over my life. And beyond that, there's another thing from the E-Myth, Michael Gerber.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic
Yes.
book.
It's a fabulous book.
Your business is a reflection of you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're sloppy, if you're disorganized, your business will be sloppy and disorganized. So we always recognize that, that's critical. I like the way you put that.
Yeah. As much as you would like to help every business out there, I guess you can only spread yourself so thin, but what should, assuming somebody couldn't engage you specifically, what should somebody look for in a good business coach?
Yeah, really good questions. I made a video about this a while ago where I essentially outed a lot of the most difficult questions that business coaches really hope they don't get asked. Some of them are really subtle, and I actually got pretty dang devious with it. But I'd say one of the most important ones is really sussing out the most dangerous thing, and this is true for any kind of advisor, is somebody that isn't just malintended. Because those people, we can suss them out. I mean, we even just get an off feeling. We might not exactly know how to put our finger on it, but it's just it gets obvious. But it's the people that don't know that they're unqualified. So figuring out how to identify that is so key. And that's where it actually takes an expert to kind of out other experts that can't. But it's funny. I don't know if either of you are Simpsons fans, but there's an episode where I love it, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it was Marge Simpson. She was becoming a piano teacher, and Homer said, "But you don't know how to play piano." But then Marge said, "Doesn't matter. I'll just stay one lesson ahead of the kid." And it's entertaining because it fits in piano, but it does not fit in this world. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people that assume that a business's growth trajectory, which is essentially a human growth trajectory, that it's linear. It's not. Something can come out of left field, and this constantly happens in my line of work. There's a general story I could even share what happened yesterday, but these things pop up, and if you don't know how to identify them, let alone handle them, you're either missing a tremendous opportunity for growth, or the business suddenly becomes DOA. So I think the best and most important way to qualify a coach is somebody that really recognizes how unbelievably complex this journey is and gives it the respect that it deserves, which manifests probably in the best way. And this is how I guess you could identify it easily. Getting them to say, you know what, that's just not in my realm of expertise. I don't know how to do that. And that's something that I would hand off to someone else. But somebody inversely that says they can do anything and everything and promises the world.
Not true.
That's a red flag.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I actually had when I first started Rhino years ago. My attorney at the time said, "Piece of advice I have for you is do not be married to your business model. The world shifts. Shift with it."
Yes.
Who moved my cheese?
Who moved my cheese? Exactly. And if you're worried about where your cheese has gone, you're too focused on you've ingrained your mission into your ego, and therefore the ego can't be wrong.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the problem. You need to take the ego out of this. Running a business is difficult work and requires you to sometimes sit and go, I don't know how I don't even know how to do this, and be okay with that, and that it's okay that you don't know how to do this. But the question really then it comes back to people like Leo, who the heck do I ask?
Right. So Leo, do you have any like dirty secrets of the of the business coach world that you can share with us without getting sued or something?
Oh yeah, bring it on.
Or getting us sued.
Yeah, or getting us sued.
Here's probably the dirtiest one. This is the most important one, and this drives me absolutely up the wall because it's funny. People always ask me, who's your competition? Frankly, my competition is not other business coaches. I refer to them like nobody's business because we're all in this together, right? And those that are really well-intended and qualified, usually within a very specific niche, I use them to no end. And I'm one of the very few generalists, and secretly I feel woefully unqualified to be a generalist, because then you realize how unbelievably in depth that role is. But here's the secret: is a lot of coaches step into an engagement, and then when it doesn't work, they blame the client. And to me, that's truly unforgivable, because yes, sometimes clients don't do the homework, but that's an opportunity to adapt the homework. One of the first things that's most important to me is figuring out how my clients learn. They're more auditory or they're more kinesthetic, and figuring out what is the homework that gets done, and also what will motivate them. Because there's something called acrasia, which is a phenomenon of somebody being afraid of actually succeeding. It's really fascinating. But so often, exactly, people will often have a goal that's often externally put on, or just kind of arbitrarily assigned, and then they have other things associated with it that just scare them to pieces, so they don't actually work towards that goal. And it's a coach's job to uncover that. And on the surface level, it would be easy to say, oh yes, we set that goal, but they just didn't do the homework, so that's on them, not me. To me, that's a coach that really just didn't dig deep enough.
Well, it's not a coach.
Exactly. So
Right.
it haunts me, and it will to my dying day, all the different times that I can look back and say, you know what, I could have done more. I could have gone deeper, but luckily that's become something that's incredibly motivating to me,
Right.
and drives me forward. And I accept the fact that will always be the case, because if I ever look back and say, oh, I'm perfect, that means I've stopped growing.
You've stopped learning.
Exactly. And I'm not okay with that either.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult thing. You always have to, if you're going to be in an advisory capacity of any kind, you have to always ask, did I do my best?
Yeah.
Could I have done that better? If so, you should go back to the client and say, sorry, I could have done that better. Here's how we should do it.
Which, if I can interject, is one of the best ways to establish credibility. It's so counterintuitive, but if nothing ever goes wrong, which actually means that you're not acknowledging anything that went wrong, it still went wrong, you're just not accepting it,
Right.
then people are going to wonder, what happens if things actually go wrong? Will they be there? But it's actually funny. I'm very grateful for when things go wrong in the beginning, because then acknowledging them and working through that together also sets a great standard and a great example for the client of saying, you know what, something going wrong, just how people often say, oh, failure is so bad. It's a step in the process, as long as you treat it as the right process. Otherwise, it's just accepting some fate, some fixed mindset. There's another great one, Mindset by Carol Dweck. And that's not really playing the real game.
Yeah. So go ahead. That's all right. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well,
That's awesome.
I interrupted him so bad he forgot what he was going to say.
I was just thinking about different businesses from 0 to approximately 10 million. They must be so different. You're just getting started to having a model to scaling. How do you deal with each one of those in turn? Because they must be so different from each other.
Great question. And people often ask me that question in a slightly different way of saying, what industries do you focus on? And the answer is really the same to both. Is I look at businesses in terms of the business model. There's essentially 12 different forms. There's what people recognize as product and service businesses, shared resource, audience aggregation, insurance investment, all these different forms. And when you really break it into those pieces, or at least when I break it into those pieces, it works for me.
Right.
And it makes the business a lot simpler. And going back to the thing we talked about in the very beginning, that the theory is 7 variables is what the brain can comprehend at one time. When a business is really put in paper using that kind of methodology, it becomes so simple. And simply put, Dan, what I do is I take a business, I look at it through that methodology, and I explain it to the business owner. And then through that, in a Socratic method, they can start seeing, all right, these are the variables that I need to change. Even if I don't know how, that's where I want to focus. And then the motivation kicks in. Then it's about giving them the right tools, connections, step-by-step method, in order to just increase what's coming out that equation that we created together. So I've yet to see a business model itself, or a business that's so complex. I will say, and this is one of the reasons that I stop when it gets closer to 10 million, which is a corollary, right? Because there's some business models that I work with 10 million. It's really not that complex. But it's interesting. I'd say the more complicating variable is people. So when you get too many people in there, and I don't say too many as in it's not operable, it's just not how I operate. My system doesn't work that well, because then it's like a game of telephone. And you both know, I mean, if you're getting improper data from an IT system, for example, you can't really do your jobs. So
Right.
I can't properly do my job when there are too many people involved, because then I spend too much time communicating instead of just doing. So my best fit is a smaller company where it's a model that we can really put down on paper and just focus on that equation with just 1 to 3 people in charge. And then that's my ball game. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah. Um,
So are you going to ask him about the near-death experiences or what?
I was saving that one, but seeing as you brought it up, like, how many?
7. Depending
Please explain, because that
funny.
seems crazy.
on
One wasn't enough.
Yeah, right. I was just hankering for more. So these were all accidental. Now, granted, you can always extrapolate. Say, well, some of this was maybe just me not being as careful as I should have been. But it's funny, my fiance.
Go on.
Yeah, well, the love of my life, my business partner, she hates me talking about this, which is funny. So I apologize to her. But I feel like each one of those experiences accelerated things. Because I mean, I don't know if either of you have had one or close to one. You really step out of it saying, wow, I need to look at everything and make sure that if that had been it, I'm okay with that.
Right.
So just to list a couple, almost drowned twice and was saved luckily by people there. And that was me just freak accident slipping off a kickboard one time. Those are uneventful. Another one where one of my little brothers, a mentee of mine, it was Super Bowl Sunday. He was going in and out of the window because he thought it was more entertaining to do that than go through the front door. Super Bowl Sunday, neighbor didn't recognize him, thought that as a young man breaking into the house, called the cops, 7 cops in front. And we were almost shot that day. And it was just moments away from that happening. Luckily, it went the right way.
Wow.
But that was a moment afterwards where you're just like, oh my goodness. 2 near-death car accidents. Another time I almost bled to death, but luckily got the right help in the right time. So each of those, I feel like, was just a moment. I don't know if you've seen those YouTube videos where it's like the B movie, but each time they say B, it's faster. I feel like that's how my life has gone. Each of those moments sped things up.
Right.
So it's caused me to just pay that much closer attention. There was a moment, and this was probably the most impactful one, but I got what effectively amounted to a false cancer diagnosis. Somebody said, you have cancer. And me being a stupid young man essentially said, oh, great, I've got cancer. I'm just going to make the most of the time I had left. So I did door-to-door sales. I did everything I could to learn my craft. But frankly, had I not had that acceleration, using that analogy, I wouldn't have done those things that really made all these other things that I do now possible. So in a weird, morbid, sick way, I'm grateful for them, but I'm good without having any others.
Right.
Well, it is funny. There are things you do in your life, and as you're going, especially in your younger days, when you're going through them, and you're like, why the hell am I going through this? This is nonsense. This has no bearing on anything I want to do, want to be in, et cetera, et cetera. And it's only like 30 years later that you're like, oh, I get it.
Right. Right.
And yeah. So we're happy you're still here.
Yes.
I am too.
That's a very good thing. And that, that it was a positive thing for you. So
and you have a link to the EU. I mean, I'm originally from England. I have a British passport still. I'm a US citizen as well. But
you guys aren't in the EU anymore.
That's true.
You gave that up.
We're close.
You walked away, man.
Oh no. I'm a dual national. I'm a US citizen.
So tell us some more about that. Whereabouts?
So Germany, yeah.
Germany.
My mother's German, and they put in the incredible work to make sure that I could be a dual national. And that's been nice. It's really, I lived there for a little while as well. My father was in the Foreign Service, so everywhere from Berlin, Bulgaria, London, Sydney, some of them for just very short stints, some of them for longer. It gave me a worldwide perspective that I really find just absolutely priceless, because I think it's easy, especially as an American. I grew up largely in America, to just think that that's it. That's America. That's the world.
Yeah.
And everybody sees America as America sees America. And that's just not the case. So.
Right.
Yeah, it really is.
I've always said this, but I believe that everyone should travel extensively.
Absolutely.
It changes your mindset. It changes a lot of things. It certainly changed my life. It opens your eyes to the rest of the world. And I think there's nothing quite like it.
Yeah. And being a foodie, for me, travel is all about food, man. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Everywhere I go, it's like, whose kitchen?
Yes.
Exactly. And I love, you might be just like me. I love finding those little holes in the walls.
Totally.
Like
Yeah.
wandering around Paris and just
Street
going to
food.
a restaurant. It's just,
Yeah.
or the doner kebab place in Berlin. Just,
Right. Often street food is the best food you'll ever find. And it's a shame it's not more prevalent in Europe or the Western countries, but you travel to other parts of the world and it's everywhere. That's often the best food. But yeah.
No, it's
Amazing.
So nice.
To wrap this up, do you have any crazy stories that you'd like to share from either work or personal or anything like that?
Oh man, we could stay here for hours. Those. But I don't know. I'd say probably the greatest honor of mine is just being there for the journey with my clients, and I don't know who said it, which is ironic because it's very timely, or it's a perfect result of this quotation where they said you can get anything done as long as you don't care who gets the credit. And I don't remember who said that, so they don't get the credit. But for me, but I love the stories that I was involved in where I don't get any credit. And it was just because of a role I played, an introduction I made, or some hard work that I did that I gave complete credit for to somebody else. And I don't care. So for me, frankly, those best stories are ones where I get to see people doing truly amazing things, helping others, and just being able to say, you know what, I'm so glad I could have done that. So, I mean, there's a gentleman yesterday I just met up with that's going to have a huge impact. I'm really excited for that to come to light. And we had that critical conversation of, do I keep doing this or do I drop it? And just through really reminding him of the things that we've talked about, the things that are most important, it helped him reinvest in the process. And that's really just his heart and soul, in the process. Yeah. And those, I could tell you till the cows come home, those, because I remember each of them like it was just yesterday. So I guess that's not as crazy of a story as a self-serving list of examples, but I don't want to take up too much of you guys this time.
No, that's fantastic.
I'll share one really quickly. I helped start a company that made food out of bugs.
Oh, nice. Yeah, awesome. That's the future, right? I hear that's the future.
Well, we were a little early, but it was truly fascinating.
Right. Amazing. Well, I want to thank you so much, Leo. It's been a true honor to have you on our show. And I really, really hope that, our audience will take your message. We'll putting in lots of links to your website. And I would encourage everyone to go out and contact Leo. Just have that conversation. If it's a great fit, perfect. If not, Leo knows tons of other people. He's a great connector and just a wonderful human being. So thank you so very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, both of you.
Thank you so much, Leo. No, this has been our honor. Thank you so much. We love doing this. This is truly a kick in the head. So, yeah, have a wonderful day, sir, and we'll chat with you very soon.
Okay. All right. Thanks all.
This has been Two Blokes and a Mic. Y'all have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.